Hello, my friends. Welcome. My name is Joe. This is the Joe Martino Show. And today, I kind of want to have a very difficult conversation with you. I want to talk about the difference between blame and responsibility. We are never responsible for what people do to us, but we are 100% responsible for what it means to grow, for our efforts in our growth. And I want to talk about that today and what that distinction looks like between blame and responsibility. Let's kick it off. This is the Joe Martino Show.
You're listening to The Joe Martino Show, a podcast dealing with all things emotional, relational, and human nature. Joe is a licensed counselor in the state of Michigan, specializing in relationship therapy. He is also the author of the book, The Emotionally Secure Couple. All advice offered in this episode is offered for entertainment and educational purposes only. Enjoy the show.
All right. Hello, my friends. Welcome. I hope your day's going well wherever it is. If this sounds a little bit different, I do have a new mic today that we are testing out for this. It's one that we got for a group project of podcast, and it was already hooked up, so I decided to go with this instead of doing my normal Blue Yeti mic, which is kind of the standard podcast mic. That has really nothing to do with what I want to talk about today. What I want to talk about today is something that can be very difficult conversation to have with people. And I see this a lot with couples, but it can be with anyone. And we can just become uncomfortable with it. I'm going to just put it right out here, hopefully in the very first minute, which is this. You can be completely wronged by someone and still be completely responsible. And that can really be an offsetting conversation, in part because a lot of people who wrong people, they blame the other person. But that's not what we're talking about. I'm not saying that you're responsible, or would I ever think that you're responsible for what happened. But you are responsible for what you do next. And that distinction, that matters more than most of us realize. Because when we're going through something that is hard, something where we have been wronged, if we don't take responsibility for our own healing, if we don't take responsibility for our own growth, if we don't take our own responsibility to move forward, we will get stuck. And a lot of people are stuck waiting for apologies that are never going to happen. They're waiting for justice that might not ever come. And they're waiting for someone else to fix something that the other person legitimately broke, but that's probably never going to come. And as long as we wait on that, we will not be healthy. Because when we're waiting for someone to fix something that we're allowing to hold us back, what happens? Our life kind of stalls. We become stuck because we have cut the throttle to our own life. And we're waiting for someone else to do something. We're giving up our own agency, our own power, so that someone else can fix it. And today we're going to talk about personal responsibility, even when you've been hurt, betrayed, dismissed, treated unfairly, whatever it is. I want to talk about what is your personal responsibility to fix that, not what was done. And I think that's the rub. A lot of times what happens is we think, when we hear this conversation, we think somebody's saying we have to fix what was done to us. I don't agree with that at all. I do think you are 100% responsible for your own growth, for your own healing. And it's not fair, but fair is a place where you pay people to pet pigs. You will be stuck as long as you chase the idea of fair. And let's get something clear right off the bat. There is a difference between fault and responsibility. They're not the same thing. Fault answers the question, who did this? Who broke whatever's broken? Who did the hurting? Whatever that is, that's someone that can very well be someone else. Responsibility answers the question, what am I going to do right now? So I'm not responsible if someone assaults me. I'm not responsible if someone hurts me. I'm not responsible if someone comes after me. But I am responsible to ask myself the question, what am I going to do now because that happened? How am I going to respond? I can be 0% at fault and still 100% responsible for my own healing, and that's also true of you. If someone cheated on you, it's not your fault. If your parents were emotionally unavailable, it's not your fault. If your boss mistreated you, it's not your fault. If your brother, your sister stopped talking to you, it's not your fault necessarily. But your response, your boundaries, your growth, your healing, 100% your responsibility. That's all you. That's all on you. And if you don't take ownership of that, you hand the rest of your life to a person who hurt you, which just sounds like insanity to me. Now, the truth is we all tend to resist this idea. We all want to resist this idea. And at some level, I get it because it sounds unfair. And we are a culture that very much wants fair. It feels unfair. It looks fair. Maybe it is unfair. But this is one of the reasons I often say fair is a place for people to pet pigs. Because this feels like we're letting someone off the hook. It feels like there might be a lack of justice. It feels like you're being asked to carry more than you should be asked to carry. And that makes sense to me. And yet we have to reject it because we are 100% responsible for it. Now, so that's the first reason people tend to reject it. This idea that, look, this is just unfair. The truth is there's another reason we choose to reject it, and it's absolutely 100% antithetical to healing, and that is the truth that anger can feel powerful. You can feel strong when you're angry because your body gets flooded with your fight, flight, or freeze chemicals, and all of the chemicals that you need to engage in those things gets running. And bitterness can feel strong. It can feel warm. It can be that comforting blanket, especially when it feels justified. And it feels like proof that what happened mattered. When you're angry and you're bitter, it's like, okay, look, you know what? Here's the proof that I was wronged, and here's the proof that it matters. The problem is, while bitterness feels powerful, it's actually just keeps you stuck. Responsibility will often feel heavy. It'll feel weak. It'll feel like you're stuck. It'll feel like meh, right? Which there's not really a spelling on that word. But responsibility actually makes you strong. That's a difference that we can't just pass up. When you refuse responsibility because you were wronged, you stay tied to the event. You stay tied in that moment in time. But when you take responsibility for your growth, you begin the separation process. You begin to separate from the moment where you were hurt. You've heard the phrase, control what you control. And I love that phrase, so I'm not making fun of it. But most people just kind of give it a head nod. Oh, yeah, that's kind of true. But very few people practice it, especially people who have been wronged. And we've kind of gotten here in our society. We relegate our moral responsibility to other people. Well, yeah, of course I did that because so-and-so did that. But here's the thing. What you actually control are your beliefs about what happened. Your beliefs about you as a result of what happened. Your behavior moving forward. Your boundaries. Your effort in healing. Your willingness to get help. Your decision to grow. All of those are completely under your control. Now, here's a hard one. You may not control how you feel about it. You may not control how quickly you heal. You may not control how you feel about the process of healing. You definitely do not control whether they apologize, whether they understand, whether it feels fair, whether justice comes quickly, or whether they ever change. If your peace depends on something that another person does, your peace is permanently outsourced. It is their then responsibility. There's a person that I'm not in communication with, and I'm not sure when this one's coming out. I think this is coming out like a week before I have to have some pretty major surgery. And I haven't decided if I'm going to tell them yet. I haven't talked to them in a long time. And it's somebody that it's a complicated situation. I don't want to air laundry publicly. But here's the thing. I've never heard an apology. I'm not responsible for that. I've never heard a, hey, I'm sorry. I'm not responsible for that. I am responsible for my own healing and to live in such a way that is true to my values and the values that I have. Because an outsourced peace is an unstable peace. A stable peace comes from integrated living between what my values are and how I act. I often don't get to control what happened. Very rarely do you or I get to control what happens to us. Now, there are times that we can. There are times that we can choose how we interact with someone or something. But most of the time, what happens to us is out of our control. Not letting that define us or whether it defines us is completely under our control. Because here's a really uncomfortable truth. No one else can regulate your nervous system. No one else can regulate your brain. No one else can challenge your distorted beliefs. No one else can choose to heal for you. No one else can do the reps required to grow. I used to coach and I would tell my athletes, you decide whether or not you're going to work out in the off season or not. It's up to you. You decide whether or not you're going to show up in shape or out of shape or in a shape that is not helpful to the sport you're trying to play. Now, in our own lives, in our own healing, sure, friends can help us. They can help support us. They can be there emotionally. They can walk with us. One of my clients says that her friends help her keep her head out of the oven, a metaphor that is brutally honest. Therapy can guide you. right? Like I believe in talk therapy. And I think if you want to heal, if you choose to heal, going to talk therapy is an important step. Books, I love books. If you haven't already, be sure to order my Start Anyway workbook on the Kindle App Store. It's on the Kindle App Store, the Kindle Bookstore for 99 cents. It's a short book for serious change. I believe books can help you. I've written one big book called The Emotionally Secure Couple. I'm in the middle of creating a series of books called Small Books, Serious Change, that are just very short books to help people change. But they can only teach us so much. Eventually, you have to do the work. You have to build your own emotional strength. You have to lean into the hurt in order to find healing. And when we wait for the person who hurt us to fix our pain, one of the problems then becomes that we give them permanent authority over our lives. We give them the steering the steering, I sound like I was from West Virginia. We give them the steering wheel to our lives. They direct where our lives go. And most of the time, this is a terribly hard truth to accept. Most of the time, they're not even thinking about it anymore. It's not even on their radar. Most of the time, they have completely moved on from it. And I know that's hard, and I know that that is a difficult truth, but it's a real truth. It is real. And we have to accept that because you still might be living in the moment that they've already moved past. And responsibility, you owning your own responsibility for your healing, for your growth, for your effort, that's how you step out of that moment. Now, I do think that there are some misunderstandings around this, maybe people with good intentions trying to tell a good story and they ended up telling it in a bad way. And some of that is like, well, just rub some dirt on it. That's a really good advice to somebody on a baseball field that just had to slide in the dirt or just had a baseball hit them, rub some dirt on it and move on. Guys, I can't wait. Baseball season is here. It's a very exciting time for me. But here's the thing that I'm talking about today. That's really bad advice when we're talking about emotional hurt. We don't want personal responsibility is not pretending that it didn't hurt. It's not minimizing the trauma. Sometimes we over maximize it and people, and we've met people like this. I'm sure I know you have, I know I have, where there are people that they kind of want to live with their trauma as their identity. We would call that over maximizing it. We never want to excuse abuse. Someone that's abusing people or someone that has abused people, we want to make zero excuses for that. We don't have to reconcile with unsafe people. We conflate forgiveness and reconciliation and personal healing as all one thing. And sometimes it isn't. Sometimes personal responsibility to heal and forgiveness are completely separate from reconciliation because the person refuses to make any changes to do what is necessary in their life. They're still stuck in a pattern that is completely unsafe for other people. And then here's the other one. We're not skipping grief. I want to be really clear on this. Do not think that you being wronged is an excuse to live in grief for the rest of your life, but it's also not a reason that somehow you're going to skip it in order to heal. That's not personal responsibility. That's not healing. That's typically being stuck with a different spelling. Because when we talk about our responsibility to heal, what we're actually talking about is responsibility to grieve, to go through the process. I met one time with a young man whose wife had just left him and he had filed for divorce. And it was an amicably ugly divorce. And he was just like, yeah, I'm fine. No, bro, you're either skipping grief or you're a sociopath. Because anybody who doesn't feel feelings is either skipping grief, which could be disassociation or a number of other things, or you're a sociopath. Responsibility does include our anger. In other words, it's okay to feel it. It's part of the grieving process. Whether you believe in the 5-step or the 7-step model, anger is part of it. But what you do with that anger is very important. It's the important step. That's the part of healing that you have to own. That's the part of healing that you have to consider. In other words, you're allowed to be angry. I can never stress this enough. I don't understand. People are like, well, I just don't want to be angry. Well, I have bad news. That's just part of life. It's part of living, and it's definitely part of the healing process. But you're not allowed to harm other people because you're angry. And along with this, I think sometimes we feel like, well, the responsibility to heal means I can't say that I was wronged or that was wrong because, well, to me, it was wrong. No. If it was wrong, it was wrong. Just say that. Just own that. You were wronged. It's okay to say that out loud. And if the other person feels bad about it, then that kind of tells you where they're at. And that's just how we'll have to move on so that you can heal, which does bring us back to what it doesn't include. It doesn't include your identity around being wronged. And this is where we can get in trouble because we can justify our poor behaviors because, well, of course I was angry. And what happens is we make those behaviors okay because, well, I was angry. I was wrong. He said this, she did that. And well, I think the problem is we forget that you can acknowledge the wound without becoming the wound. You can acknowledge the wound without becoming the wounder. And then when we get into this stage where now we recognize, hey, you know what? I've been wounded. I'm going to grieve that, but I'm also responsible for how I grow. I'm also responsible for how I heal. This becomes empowering because when you focus on only who caused you the grief, you stay reactive. You stay in a completely reactive mode, and it's not even reflective. It's totally reactive. If you remember, I've talked in the past about the 3 types of thinking: reactive, reflective, and moral reasoning. But one of the things that happens here is when you stay reactive, you get lost because you're constantly reacting to what happened. But when you focus on what you can build next, how you're going to build what's next, you can become proactive. And here's the thing, whether or not you do it on purpose, you are building what comes next. When you stay stuck in the pain of what happened, you're lost because you no longer have taken ownership of the fact that you're building something. You shift from this has ruined my life, or I've gotten stuck on this, to this hurt, but I'm still responsible for where I go from here. I'm still responsible for what I'm building. And in that movement, in that shift, that's where strength lives. The strength doesn't mean you're unaffected. The growth doesn't mean you're unaffected. It doesn't even mean that it didn't change you. Maybe if you were hurt on whatever day, your life will forever look different. That is certainly a possibility. There are some hurts that they forever change you. But you still have to be unwilling to be defined by it as in who you are character-wise, as in who you are in your core. Because when you do that, then you grow. For many of us, you didn't choose what happened to you. You didn't choose the assault or the pain or the unfaithfulness or the hurt. But you do get to choose who you become because of it. You do get to choose who you become in the next step. And the truth is, you will decide that whether you do it on purpose or not, whether you do it intentionally or not, you are responsible. You can't control injustice. You can't control other people's decisions, but you can control your own. You can control your own integrity. You can control your own growth. Maybe not the speed of it, but your effort in it. You can control whether pain becomes an excuse or something that happened to you. One of the most pivotal moments in many therapy sessions is when I sit with someone and I say, how would your life change if the thing that we're talking about was just something that happened to you? Responsibility isn't punishment. Saying I'm responsible for this, it doesn't diminish what the other person did or increase somehow that you were wrong. It doesn't change the fact that you were innocent, if you were innocent. But it is returning the power of your growth, your own self-agency of your life back into your hands. And the moment you pick up that responsibility, your life starts moving again and you start healing. And that is a powerful place to be, my friends. So often we feel powerless because we cede our control, we cede our self-agency to someone who hurt us, and they don't even care. Okay, so if you've gotten this far, this is a little silly, but let's do the TLDR version of this. You didn't choose what happened to you. When you're wrong, you didn't choose what happened to you, but you do choose what happens next. It doesn't have to be perfect. It will rarely be instantly, but it has to be intentionally. Responsibility is not about carrying blame that belongs to other people. It's not, but it is about reclaiming power that is still yours. It's about taking back your agency. Someone may have wounded you. That matters. It's important, and we don't want to diminish that. Your healing, your boundaries, your growth, they matter more because you control them. And the moment you stop waiting for someone else to fix it and you start owning your own next step, you're no longer defined by what hurt you. It's just, I'm telling you, I've sat with so many people who, when they've made this switch in their mind, they have experienced tremendous healings from some really awful things. All right, my friends, I want to hear about what's going on in your life. Send me an email. Tell me about hurts that you've overcome and how you did it. Tell me what you thought about this episode. If you liked it, please feel free to share it with your friends. I can't tell you how much that helps me. Thanks so much for listening. We'll catch you next week.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed today's show, please share with a friend. And hey, give us that rating in your podcast store. Until next time, change possible.